Welcome to the City of Moreno Valley's online application workshop. This workshop has been designed for potential applicants interested in applying for CDBG, home and/or ESG funding for the 2016-17 fiscal year. It is intended to walk an applicant through the application packet and covers the same topics that would be covered if the presentation were offered in person. Purpose of workshop continued. The presentation and booklet will help to explain the goals of each of the grant programs and assist you in applying for funds. Because of the strict eligibility criteria, you are encouraged to listen carefully to this presentation. Review the application booklet, but also conduct additional research as needed to determine if your project qualifies under the federal regulations. As a reminder, applications for the 2016-17 fiscal year shall be available on January 20, 2016, and are due on February 19, 2016 at 4:30 p.m. at the close of the business day. For your convenience, this online presentation will be available for viewing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the application period. Anticipated grants. Every year, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, allocates federal grant monies to qualifying cities, such as the City of Moreno Valley. Currently, Moreno Valley receives 3 separate allocations, known as 1. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG. 2. The Home Investment Partnership Program, commonly referred to as HOME. And 3. The Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. Anticipated funding. The amount of funding varies from year to year based on a mathematical formula that considers the area's demographics. The allocations for fiscal year 2016-17 have not yet been announced. However, staff anticipates Moreno Valley will receive an amount comparable to last year, which was approximately $2 million in CDBG funds, $500,000 in home monies, and almost $200,000 in ESG funds. Funding limits. Home. HUD imposes limits on how cities can spend their grant funding. For example, home laws allow for no more than 10% of the annual home allocation to be set aside for the city's planning and administration of the grant. This means that if the city receives $500,000 in home, 10% of that, or $50,000, may be reserved for city administration and oversight costs. Additionally, home law mandates that 15% of the annual grant be set aside for housing projects completed in partnership with a certified community housing development organization, referred to as a CHODO. Only an organization that has formally applied and has been approved by the City Council as a certified CHODO can utilize that specific set of monies. More about CHODO's qualifications can be found on page 12 of the application. Once the 10% in administration and the 15% in CHODO are set aside, the remaining monies are made available for open competition. Funding limits, ESG. As with home, a percentage of the ESG allocation may be set aside for the city's planning and administration. ESG regulations limit this amount to no more than 7.5% of the annual grant. The remaining amount may be made available for competition to be used for projects and activities that serve the homeless. Funding limits, CDBG. Because CDBG is a larger grant that requires more oversight, HUD allows for up to 20% of the CDBG award to be used toward general program administration. This amount totals about $400,000 of the allocation. The next cap is very important. A maximum of 15% of the city's total annual CDBG allocation may be used for public service activities. Cities are not required to allocate any funding to public services. However, due to the high service demand, Moreno Valley City Council chooses to set aside the full 15%. Should Moreno Valley again be issued $2 million in CDBG funding, HUD will limit the amount that nonprofits may compete for and use toward public service activities to about $300,000. This is normally the most sought-after category of CDBG funding, and so we'd like to emphasize how limited and therefore how extremely competitive the application process can be. The remaining 65%, or about $1.3 million a year, can be used for other community development activities described on the next slides, but may not include public services. General grant uses. Generally speaking, HUD regulations require the entitlement grants be used to provide programs and services that benefit the low to moderate income persons or low to moderate income neighborhoods. A list of eligible activities for each program is provided in the application packet beginning on page 53 through page 57. A list of activities and projects the City undertook last year is included on the very last pages of the packet for easy reference. Eligible Activities, CDBG. CDBG eligible activities are included on page 53. In the past, the City of Moreno Valley has chosen to fund important activities such as code enforcement, public street improvements, ADA improvements at city parks, economic development activities that assist low-income micro-businesses, as well as public services. For more details on CDBG project eligibility, you may also visit the HUD website provided. Ineligible Activities, CDBG. Activities that you may not undertake using CDBG are listed in the booklet on page 54. CDBG may not be used to make direct monetary payments to residents or for the City to provide funding to itself for the general conduct of government. The City may also not use CDBG to fund political activities, airports, hospitals, stadiums, etc. Eligible Activities. The main purpose of the HOME program is to assist local governments in expanding its supply of decent, safe, sanitary, and affordable housing. A list of eligible home activities is available on page 55. Eligible activities include acquisition, new construction, reconstruction, or rehabilitation of non-luxury housing. Examples of home projects. Past home-funded projects include the City's Mobile Home Grant Program. The City also has a long list of multifamily affordable housing projects where home monies were used toward the purchase, construction, and/or rehabilitation. In exchange for the City's contribution, a set number of units within each complex is available at below-market rates to income-qualified renters. Eligible Activities, ESG. The ESG program is intended to provide homeless services. Eligible activities are listed on page 56 and include street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, rapid rehousing assistance, and Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. Who may apply? Federal regulations allow the City to subcontract their grant services to public agencies, private nonprofit organizations with current valid 501c3s. In some circumstances, a community-based development organization, or CBDO, and even a for-profit entity can be provided CDBG funds by the City to carry out agreed-upon activities that are eligible under the federal regulations. Faith-based organizations may also apply and are subject to guidelines described in HUD Memo number CPD 04-10. Who must be served with the grant monies? Low to moderate income persons must be the beneficiaries of the federally funded activities. The income levels will depend on the program. The income chart outlines the income levels of the individuals and households these programs intend to serve. HUD updates the income limits every year. Areas of service. Cities are required to concentrate their programs in areas determined to contain majority low to moderate income residents. These areas are referred to as CDBG target areas. This is a map of the current Moreno Valley CDBG target areas. CDBG National Objectives. In order for an activity or program to be eligible for CDBG funding, it must qualify as meeting one or more of the following three national objectives. Objective number 1. Activities benefiting low to moderate income persons and/or households. Objective number 2. Activities which aid in the prevention or elimination of slums or blight. Objective number 3. Activities designed to meet community development needs having a particular urgency. National Objective 1. As a condition of the CDBG grant, the city must certify that a minimum of 70% of the total annual allocation must be used to benefit low to moderate income persons. Again, the definition of a low to moderate income person or household is one having an income equal to or less than the Section 8 lower income limits established by HUD. Ways to meet National Objective 1. National Objective 1 can be met by either providing a direct benefit or an area benefit. Direct benefit. A direct benefit activity can be either a public services or an economic development activity. More information on this can be found on pages 8 and 9. Direct benefit, public services. Examples of public services include crime prevention, public safety, homeless services, recreation and youth programs, and specialized counseling. At least 51% of a public service activity's clientele must be documented as low to moderate income persons. Public service projects must be a new service or an increase in the existing level of services. Direct benefit, economic development. Activities include all endeavors aimed at increasing or maintaining the level of business activity in the city. These activities mandate that a business must create or retain permanent jobs, of which 51% will be available to persons of low to moderate income. Area benefit. An area benefit activity serves geographic areas where no less than 51% of the households are low to moderate income. Examples of area benefit activities include public improvements such as street, sidewalk, curb and gutter improvements, community center improvements, and code enforcement. National Objective 2. Activities which aid in the prevention or elimination of slums or blight. In order to be eligible under National Objective 2, the activity must be designed to address one or more of the conditions which qualified the area as slum and blighted per local laws or ordinances. Projects outside of a slum or blighted area may still qualify on a spot basis if they propose to eliminate substandard conditions detrimental to public health and safety. National Objective 3. Urgent need. Activities qualifying under this category must be designed to alleviate conditions that pose a serious and immediate threat to the health or welfare of a community. This national objective is normally triggered only by a state of emergency or natural disaster such as an earthquake or hurricane. City's objectives and policies. The 2016-17 objectives and policies were approved by Council on January 19, 2016. Proposed programs should fit into one of the categories of objectives. Objective and policies continued. An important item for prospective applicants to note is the public services ranking within the public service objective. Because of the competitive nature surrounding the public service dollars, the Council approves a public service priority ranking each year. The rankings are used during the application process to assist evaluators in determining which application should be considered priority. Grant policies. Most of Moreno Valley's policies are not new. Most of them have been in place for as long as Moreno Valley has been working with the programs. However, this year new policies were adopted by the City Council. One policy encourages a minimum of 3 years of grant management experience. This shall enable the city to strengthen the quality of its applicants, partnerships, and overall performance of Moreno Valley's programs. The second offers the possibility of extending a contract with a subgrantee for 1 year if the grant year is completed successfully. This continues the partnership with high-performing agencies. The extension is subject to available funding and council approval. ESG Policies. The city's newest grant is ESG. Moreno Valley has only been a recipient for no more than 2 years. Staff has determined it necessary to adopt ESG-specific policies that help the city to better manage the program. The ESG policies are listed on pages 22 and 23. ESG match requirements. Federal regulations require a 100% dollar-for-dollar match for the ESG monies. As a local policy, the city shall require the subrecipient to be responsible for the entire match. The match may be met with a combination of cash or in-kind services. However, in-kind may not exceed 25% of the match. In addition, proof of 100% match is required prior to a notice to proceed and before a contract can be issued by the city. Initial proof of match, including pre-award letters, will need to be provided along with the application. Final verifiable third-party documentation serving as proof shall be necessary before entering into contract with the city. If proof cannot be provided, the ESG award shall be subject to adjustment. ESG Program Costs. Direct and indirect project costs have to be reasonable relative to the total costs of the project. It is the city's preference that total employee compensation and other overhead costs directly related to carrying out street outreach, emergency shelter, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing not exceed 30% of an overall award amount. Citizen Participation Plan. As a condition of the grant, the city is required to collect public input during its consolidating planning processes. By law, the city must have a written citizen participation plan on file that explains exactly how citizens will be afforded the opportunity to provide input regarding housing and community development needs, issues and problems affecting low to moderate income, as well as project selections for grant funding distributions. For your information, this plan is included in the application packet from pages 24 to 32. It discusses citizen involvement via public hearings, noticing, and during other stages in the grant process. Substantial Amendment Process. The substantial amendment process is a process that comes into play should an applicant receive an award, and during the program year to find that their program is experiencing change. Should your program change for any of the 8 reasons listed on page 30, the city considers this substantial, and the substantial amendment process is triggered. This means that prior to approving the change, city staff will need to hold a public hearing and gain city council's approval on that change. Staff-level approval will not be enough to approve the change, or amend an agreement, or a budget. Application Instructions. We would like to take a moment to stress that the due date for the applications is February 19, 2016, 4:30 p.m. Please submit the application as early as possible. The city will not accept late applications. This year, application packets may be scanned and submitted via email. The electronic addresses are provided in the booklet. If possible, we ask that electronic submission also be completed early. No emails time marked later than 4:30 p.m. Friday will be accepted, regardless of technical difficulties experienced. Our recommendation is that you email the application with enough time for one of our staff members to respond with a confirmation that your electronic application has been received intact. Multiple applications. Your agency may apply for more than one source of funding and may also choose to submit multiple proposals for a given grant. To avoid any confusion, please submit separate applications for each proposal. Application Document. The application document itself is largely self-explanatory. However, not all sections apply to all grant programs. If a question or section does not apply to the grant program you wish to apply for, do not fill it in. You may enter NA or simply cross out the section. Please ensure you submit the information requested under Section 2. All items are expected to be included in your application packet for it to be considered complete. If you find there isn't enough space to respond to a given question, please feel free to tack on extra pages as needed. Evaluation Process. What happens once the applications are accepted? There are several layers of reviews scheduled to occur. First, an initial review for completeness and general program eligibility will be completed. You will be contacted at this stage should staff have questions, or if additional information or clarification is needed. The city's Technical Review Committee, or TRC, plans to host an open meeting in February for all applicants, after which the application shall be scored based on the evaluation criteria on page 34. Funding recommendations will be finalized by the mayor and council member during a public finance subcommittee meeting in March, before being reviewed by the entire City Council during an April public hearing. Final project selection shall be approved by the City Council in May 2016. Federal requirements. The City would like to ensure that all applicants are aware of the requirements that they will be responsible for should their agency be awarded grant funding and become a City subgrantee. First, laws and regulations surrounding each program are available at the following websites. Federal requirements. Subgrantees of all three programs will be required to comply with the Office of Management and Budget's OMB Circular 2 CFR 200, which provides the uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards. Subgrantee Agreements. The Subgrantee Agreement is a written commitment of what was originally proposed in the application. Please be aware that should your proposal deviate from the time the application is approved, a re-review and re-approval will be required. The term of the contract is stated and finite. No costs outside of the contract period shall be considered for reimbursement. An agreement cannot be fully executed without approved scope, budget, and approved insurance. Insurance requirements are found on page 49. Agreement Stipulations. All eligible reimbursable costs are defined by federal laws and regulations. Please request eligible costs only. Also, please be aware that the CDBG, Home, and ESG grant programs are managed on a reimbursement basis. There are no advances made or checks written upon award. Your agency must be prepared to cover its own expenses and follow the reimbursement process. Once ready to request reimbursement, sufficient support documentation will be required. Agreement Stipulations continued. Subgrantees will be held responsible for maintaining proper financial management systems, records, following required procurement, and more. These requirements shall be made binding under the written grant agreement. Performance Reports. Performance reports are mandatory. Monthly reports will be required from each subgrantee in order to capture needed statistical data, such as the number of low income served and the race and ethnicity of each participant. Benefit to the low income must be documented. And as a side note, records for each person served must be maintained for a minimum of 3 years. Monitoring. The City shall perform continual desktop monitoring and at least one on-site monitoring visit during the program year. During the visit, subgrantees will need to make records available to staff. HUD may also request to visit a subgrantee's office and/or facility. Important dates. As we complete this workshop, there are several important dates to keep in mind. Applications are due on February 19, 2016 at 4:30 p.m. All applicants will be invited to attend a technical review meeting. This is not mandatory, but will offer an opportunity for each applicant to brief the committee on their proposal, and also for the committee to ask questions. This meeting is currently scheduled for February 24, 2016. Other important dates are included in Exhibit E, the 2016-17 Annual Action Plan and Citizen Participation Schedule. Some dates are subject to change. All applicants will be notified should any dates change. End of workshop. This concludes our online application workshop. We encourage you to please contact the City with any additional questions or concerns during our business hours as listed, or through the email provided. Thank you, and we look forward to your submittal.